the shattered wings. The grand hall of Draconis gleamed under 1,000 crystal chandeliers, each one reflecting light that danced across marble floors like stars fallen to earth. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, a moment of unity between the dragon clans and human settlements that had finally agreed to share medical knowledge after centuries of mistrust. Seraphine Dravenmoor sat rigid in her wheeled chair, her emerald scales catching the light in ways that once would have looked majestic during flight. Now they only reminded everyone of what she had lost. Her fingers gripped the armrests of her chair so tightly that small cracks appeared in the gilded wood. Around her, delegates from 7 dragon clans and 12 human cities gathered to witness the signing of the Skyreach Accords. 2 years ago, Seraphine would have flown to this ceremony, her wings casting shadows across the assembled crowd, her presence commanding respect through sheer aerial grace. 2 years ago, everything had been different. The accident replayed in her mind without permission as it did every night. She had been pursuing raiders who threatened a human village at the border. The explosion had come from nowhere, a trap designed specifically for dragons. The blast had severed the nerves in her wings, leaving the magnificent silver membranes hanging useless at her back. The healers had tried everything: dragon fire therapy, human surgical techniques, ancient herbal remedies from the mountain clans. Nothing worked. Seraphine, the youngest dragon ever elected to the Council of Skies, could no longer touch the clouds. Lord Vexarius approached her position at the head table, his crimson scales polished to an offensive shine. He was older, traditional, and had voted against her appointment to the council 3 times. His golden eyes held no warmth as he stopped before her chair. The conversations around them dimmed as other delegates sensed the tension. "Councillor Dravenmoor," he said, his voice carrying across the hall with practiced projection. "Surely you should stand for the ceremonial greeting. It is tradition for council members to rise when addressing the assembly." The room fell completely silent. Seraphine felt her heart hammer against her ribs. She knew what he was doing. Everyone knew. Her sister Octavia, standing among the younger delegates, took a step forward, her face flushed with anger. But Seraphine raised one hand slightly to stop her. "Lord Vexarius," Seraphine began, keeping her voice steady though her throat felt tight. "I would stand if I could. As you well know, my condition makes that difficult without assistance." "Difficult?" Vexarius laughed, the sound sharp and cruel.
"My dear councillor, how can someone who cannot even stand without help presume to stand for all dragonkind?"
"Our people were born to fly. We rule the skies. What message does it send when our representative to the humans cannot rise above the ground?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some dragons shifted uncomfortably, their own wings rustling with unease. Others nodded in agreement with Vexarius. The human delegates exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether to intervene in dragon politics. Seraphine felt something break inside her, a dam she had been holding back for 2 years. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall in public. "Please," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "I just wanted to fly again. That is all I have ever wanted." "Perhaps you should have thought about that before accepting a position you are no longer fit to hold," Vexarius continued, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "Step down gracefully, councillor. Let someone capable take your place." Before Seraphine could respond, before Octavia could rush to her defense, a quiet voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "That is enough." Every head turned. Standing near the servants' entrance, partially hidden by a marble pillar, was a man in a simple gray coat. He wore the plain clothing of medical staff, someone so unremarkable that most delegates had not noticed him at all. His dark hair was touched with gray at the temples, and his brown eyes held something cold and unyielding as he stared at Lord Vexarius. "Who dares interrupt?" Vexarius demanded, his scales flaring with indignation. The man stepped forward into the light, and Seraphine noticed his hands. They were steady, precise, the hands of someone who had held life and death between their fingers. "Dr. Julian Thornfield," he said simply. "I am assigned to medical oversight for this event, and I am telling you that mocking someone for their injuries is conduct unbecoming of any delegate, dragon or human." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vexarius drew himself up to his full height, which was considerable even without spreading his wings. "You are a human physician of no rank or title. You have no authority to speak here." Julian did not move, did not raise his voice, but something in his presence made even Lord Vexarius hesitate. I have the authority of basic decency, he said. Something you seem to have misplaced. A few nervous laughs escaped from the human delegation. Even some of the younger dragons hid smiles behind their claws. Vexarius turned purple with rage, but before he could respond, the High Magistrate of the Dragon Council struck his staff against the floor 3 times, the sound echoing through the hall. Enough, the ancient dragon declared. This ceremony will proceed with dignity, or it will not proceed at all. Lord Vexarius, return to your seat. Dr. Thornfield, you have my thanks for your intervention, though in the future, allow the council to manage its own affairs. Julian bowed slightly, his expression unreadable, and retreated back toward the pillars. But as he passed Seraphine's chair, he paused for just a moment. His hand reached out and gently touched the decorative flowers on the table beside her, adjusting them so they faced her direction rather than the crowd. Some of the most beautiful things in nature never fly, he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Flowers root themselves in the earth and still reach toward the sky. Then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows near the service corridors before she could respond. Seraphine stared after him, her tears finally spilling over, but for the first time in 2 years they were not entirely tears of despair. The ceremony continued. Documents were signed, speeches were made, and alliances were forged. But Seraphine barely heard any of it. Her mind kept returning to the quiet doctor, who had stood up for her when her own people would not, who had seen her not as a broken dragon, but as someone worth defending. As the evening drew to a close and delegates began to disperse, Octavia wheeled Seraphine toward the exit. That doctor, her sister said thoughtfully. There is something about him. Did you see how Lord Vexarius actually backed down? I have never seen anyone face down a council lord like that. Seraphine nodded slowly, her mind already working through possibilities. Tomorrow, she decided, she would find Dr. Julian Thornfield. She would learn who he really was and why a simple human physician had eyes that held such profound understanding of pain. Outside the grand hall, storm clouds gathered over the city of Skyreach, and thunder rumbled in the distance like the beating of enormous wings. The hidden healer morning light filtered through the tall windows of Skyreach Medical Institute, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Seraphine had spent the entire night searching through records, calling in favors and piecing together information about the mysterious Dr. Julian Thornfield. What she discovered left her more confused than before. Julian Thornfield existed only as a shadow in the medical world. He had appeared at Skyreach 5 years ago with impeccable credentials, but no history before that. He worked night shifts, avoided public recognition, and lived in a modest apartment in the lower district with his daughter. No one seemed to know anything about his past, and he never spoke of it. Octavia pushed Seraphine's chair through the Institute's main corridor, passing nurses and doctors who bowed respectfully to the dragon councillor. They found Julian in a small treatment room on the 3rd floor, examining medical charts with the focused intensity of someone reading ancient texts. His daughter sat in the corner, a girl of perhaps 9 years with dark braids and bright, curious eyes, drawing pictures in a worn notebook. Dr. Thornfield, Seraphine called out softly. Julian looked up, and for a moment something flickered in his expression before his neutral mask returned. Councillor Dravenmoor, I did not expect a visit. I wanted to thank you properly for last night, Seraphine said, studying his face carefully.
Not many would risk offending a dragon lord for a stranger. Julian set down his charts and walked toward them, his movements precise and economical.
You are not a stranger. You are a patient in need of dignity, which costs nothing to provide but means everything to receive. The little girl looked up from her drawings, her eyes widening with delight. You are a dragon. A real dragon. Papa, you did not tell me there would be dragons today. For the first time, Seraphine saw Julian smile, and it transformed his entire face. Helena, remember what we discussed about interrupting adults? But Papa, dragons are special, Helena protested, sliding off her chair and approaching Seraphine without any fear. I have read about them in all my books. They are the most magnificent creatures in the whole world. Seraphine felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. This child looked at her with pure wonder. Not pity, not disappointment, just genuine awe. Hello, Helena. You may call me Seraphine if you like. Helena's face lit up like sunrise breaking over mountains. Can I touch your scales? Are they really as strong as diamonds?
Can you breathe fire?
Why are you in a chair? Do your wings still work? Helena, Julian's voice held a gentle warning, but Seraphine laughed, the first genuine laugh she had experienced in months. It is all right. My scales are strong, yes. I can breathe fire, though only outside where it is safe. And my wings do not work anymore because I was hurt in an accident. That is why I use this chair. Helena's expression turned serious beyond her years. That must make you very sad. Papa says that when we lose something important, it feels like part of our heart breaks. But he also says that broken things can still be beautiful and useful in different ways. Seraphine glanced at Julian, who looked uncomfortable with the attention. Your father sounds very wise. He is the best doctor in the whole world, Helena declared with absolute certainty. He just does not like people to know it. Helena, why do you not show Councillor Dravenmoor your drawings of the sky gardens? Julian suggested, clearly trying to change the subject. As Helena excitedly pulled out her notebook, Octavia touched Seraphine's shoulder. I need to attend the council session about border treaties. Will you be all right here? Seraphine nodded, and Octavia departed, leaving her alone with Julian and his daughter. Helena spread her drawings across a nearby table, chattering about flowers and clouds and birds. Julian returned to his charts, but Seraphine noticed he kept glancing at his daughter with an expression of such profound love that it made her chest ache. She is wonderful, Seraphine said quietly. She is everything, Julian replied simply. After her mother died 4 years ago, Helena became my entire world. Everything I do, every choice I make is for her. Is that why you hide? The question escaped before Seraphine could stop it. Julian's hand stilled on the chart he was reading. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he walked to the door, checked the hallway, and closed it softly. When he turned back, his expression was guarded but no longer completely closed off. What do you know about the fallen sky incident? He asked. Seraphine's breath caught. Everyone knew about the fallen sky. 8 years ago, a passenger vessel carrying both humans and dragons had experienced catastrophic engine failure over the Crimson Wastes. 200 souls aboard and only 15 survivors. It had been the worst disaster in modern history, the event that nearly destroyed the fragile peace between species. I know the official reports, Seraphine said carefully. Most aboard were lost. The investigation blamed mechanical failure, but some claimed sabotage. Why? Julian pulled up his left sleeve, revealing a long scar that ran from wrist to elbow. I was the chief medical officer on that vessel. My wife was the head engineer. When the explosion happened, I was in surgery, 3 levels below the main deck. Helena had stopped drawing, listening quietly to a story she had clearly heard before. Julian continued, his voice steady but his eyes distant with memory. I saved who I could, performed surgeries in 0 gravity while the ship was falling, used emergency equipment designed for minor injuries to treat catastrophic trauma, kept people alive with nothing but my hands and whatever supplies I could salvage from the wreckage. But my wife was at the explosion center. She died trying to reroute power to the escape pods, ensuring others could survive. Seraphine felt tears prick her eyes. I am so sorry. After we were rescued, I was called a hero. They gave me medals, titles, offered me positions at the most prestigious medical facilities in 7 cities. But every honor felt like mockery because I could not save her. So I changed my name, took Helena, and came here to work in obscurity. No recognition, no titles, just medicine. Just helping where I can without the weight of expectation. But you still help, Seraphine said softly. You still heal. Julian met her eyes. Some of us are called to heal, Councillor. It is not about glory or recognition. It is about seeing suffering and being unable to walk away. Last night I saw someone being publicly humiliated for surviving trauma. I could not walk away from that either. Nurse Evelyn Brightwater knocked and entered carrying a stack of files. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a practical bun. Dr. Thornfield, Magistrate Corvinus, is here asking questions about last night's ceremony. He seems upset about something. Julian exchanged a glance with Seraphine. Show him in. Magistrate Corvinus swept into the room moments later, his official robes billowing dramatically. He was a dragon of middle years, his blue scales marked with the silver patterns of administrative rank. His eyes narrowed when he saw Seraphine. Councillor Dravenmoor, how convenient to find you here, he said, his tone suggesting it was anything but convenient. I have been reviewing security reports from last night. There are concerns about your continued position on the council. Lord Vexarius has filed an official challenge to your seat, claiming you are unfit to serve. Seraphine felt her stomach drop. On what grounds? On the grounds that you cannot fulfill the ceremonial duties of a council member, including the traditional flight demonstrations at the upcoming Summit of Clans, Corvinus replied, consulting a tablet. He has the support of 3 other council members. If the challenge goes forward, you will need to prove your capability to the full assembly. That is absurd, Seraphine protested. The council rules do not require flight capability. They require wisdom, leadership, and dedication to our people's welfare. Rules can be interpreted many ways, councillor, and tradition holds significant weight in dragon law. Corvinus glanced at Julian dismissively. Dr. Thornfield, your interference last night has been noted. I would advise you to remember your place in future council proceedings. My place is wherever healing is needed, Julian said quietly, including healing the wounds of pride and prejudice. Corvinus's scales ruffled with irritation, but before he could respond, Helena stood up from her corner. Excuse me, Magistrate, sir, but I have a question. Everyone turned to look at the small girl. Corvinus blinked, clearly unused to being addressed by children. What is it, child? If someone loses their legs, can they still think? If someone loses their voice, can they still have good ideas? If someone cannot fly, can they still lead? The simple logic stopped Corvinus mid-breath. Seraphine stared at Helena in amazement. Helena continued, her young voice clear and confident. My papa says that being a good leader is about understanding people and making wise choices. You do not need wings for that. You need a good heart and a smart brain. Miss Seraphine has both. I can tell. Corvinus sputtered, his face flushing. This is hardly appropriate. A child cannot possibly understand the complexities of dragon governance. Children understand fairness better than anyone, Julian said, placing a protective hand on Helena's shoulder. They have not yet learned to complicate simple truths with politics and prejudice. Seraphine looked at Helena, then at Julian, then back at Corvinus. Something shifted inside her, a determination that had been buried under months of self-doubt and despair. Tell Lord Vexarius I accept his challenge. I will prove my capability to lead at the Summit of Clans, and I will do so on my own terms. Corvinus looked surprised. You understand that if you fail to demonstrate adequate capability, you will be removed from the council permanently? I understand perfectly, Seraphine said, her voice ringing with newfound strength. Now, if you will excuse me, I have preparations to make. After Corvinus departed, muttering about protocols and traditions, Julian crouched beside Seraphine's chair. You did not have to accept that challenge. It was a trap designed to humiliate you further. Perhaps, Seraphine agreed. But Helena is right. I can lead without flying. I just need to show everyone else what she already sees. She looked at the little girl who was beaming with pride. Thank you, Helena. You are very brave. Papa says bravery is not about not being scared. It is about being scared and doing the right thing anyway, Helena replied. Are you scared? Terrified, Seraphine admitted. Good, Helena said seriously. That means what you are doing matters. Over the following days, Julian began examining Seraphine's medical records with Nurse Evelyn's assistance. They worked late into the evenings, reviewing every test, every failed treatment, every diagnosis from dozens of specialists. Helena often stayed with them, doing her homework at a corner desk while the adults pored over complex anatomical charts. The nerve damage is extensive, Julian said one night, pointing to scan images that showed Seraphine's wing structure in painful detail. But it is not complete. There are pathways that could potentially be reactivated with the right stimulus. Every doctor has said it is impossible, Seraphine reminded him. Every doctor was looking at the problem the wrong way, Julian replied. They were trying to repair what was broken. I am suggesting we teach your body a new way to interpret the signals it receives. Nurse Evelyn brought them tea, her expression thoughtful. Neural remapping therapy. It is experimental and incredibly risky. Everything worth doing involves risk, Julian said. The question is whether the potential reward justifies it. Seraphine looked at her useless wings, then at Helena, who had fallen asleep at her desk, her head resting on her folded arms. That child defended me to a dragon magistrate. The least I can do is try to defend myself at the summit. What do you need from me? Trust, Julian said simply, and courage, because this is going to hurt. The treatments began the next morning. Julian used a combination of ancient dragon healing techniques and modern human neuroscience, pushing the boundaries of both medical traditions. Seraphine endured hours of nerve stimulation therapy, her wings twitching and spasming as Julian tried to reawaken dormant pathways. Helena visited every day after school, bringing drawings and stories to distract Seraphine during the painful procedures. The little girl's presence became a lifeline, a reminder of innocence and hope in the midst of suffering. "Does it hurt very much?" Helena asked one afternoon, watching as Seraphine gripped the chair arms during a particularly intense session. "Yes," Seraphine admitted through gritted teeth, "but your father says pain is just information. It tells us we are still fighting." "Papa is usually right about stuff like that," Helena agreed, "though he is terrible at making breakfast. He burns everything except toast." Despite the pain, Seraphine laughed. These moments of levity, woven between the agony of treatment, made everything bearable. As the summit of clans approached, word spread throughout Skyreach about the challenge. Dragons gathered in the streets to debate whether Seraphine should remain on the council. Some supported her passionately, inspired by her determination. Others sided with Lord Vexarius, insisting that tradition must be upheld. The night before the summit, Julian found Seraphine alone in the Institute's roof garden, staring up at the stars. Her wings hung still and silent at her back, and moonlight painted silver highlights across her emerald scales. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, settling onto a bench beside her chair. "Constant thoughts," Seraphine admitted. "What if I fail tomorrow? What if Vexarius is right and I am not fit to lead?" Julian was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something Helena said to me after her mother died?" She was only 5 years old, barely old enough to understand death, and she looked at me with those serious eyes and said, "Papa, Mama did not fail because she died. She succeeded because she tried." Seraphine felt tears slide down her scaled cheeks. "She is remarkable." "She is my reason for everything," Julian said softly. "When I lost my wife, I thought my purpose died with her. But Helena showed me that purpose is not something you lose when tragedy strikes. It is something you choose again and again, every single day. You are choosing your purpose tomorrow, Seraphine. Win or lose, that choice itself is the victory." "Thank you," Seraphine whispered, "for everything. For defending me, for treating me, for reminding me that broken things can still matter." Julian stood preparing to leave, but Seraphine stopped him with a question. "If the treatment does not work tomorrow, if I cannot prove myself to the council, what will you tell Helena?" He smiled, sad but genuine. "I will tell her that we witnessed someone refuse to let the world define her limitations. That is a lesson worth more than any victory." Wings of Tomorrow. The Summit of Clans was held in the ancient Sky Court Arena, an open-air coliseum carved into the mountainside where dragons had gathered for ceremonies since time immemorial. Thousands of dragons filled the stone seats, their scales creating a rainbow of colors that shimmered in the midday sun. Human observers stood in designated areas, witnesses to this historic challenge that would determine not just Seraphine's fate, but the future relationship between their species. Seraphine sat in her chair at the center of the arena floor, feeling impossibly small under the weight of so many watching eyes. The 12 members of the Council of Skies perched on elevated platforms around the arena's perimeter, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to openly hostile. Lord Vexarius occupied the highest platform, his crimson scales polished to mirror brightness, his smile sharp as broken glass. Octavia stood with the younger dragons, her fists clenched at her sides, ready to fight anyone who spoke ill of her sister. In the human section, Julian and Helena watched from the front row. Helena clutched her father's hand tightly, her young face set with determination. High Elder Morpheus, the oldest dragon on the council at nearly 400 years, raised his staff for silence. His silver scales were marked with the scars of countless battles, and his voice carried the authority of ages. "We gather today to address Lord Vexarius's challenge to Councillor Seraphine Dravenmoor's position. The challenge claims she cannot fulfill the traditional duties of her station. Councillor Dravenmoor, how do you answer these charges?" Seraphine took a deep breath, feeling every eye upon her. Her voice rang clear across the arena, stronger than she felt inside. "I answer that tradition should serve the people, not the people serve tradition. I have led with wisdom, negotiated fair treaties, and defended both dragon and human interests with equal dedication. If my value as a leader is measured only by my ability to fly, then we have forgotten what leadership truly means." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some dragons nodded in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably. Lord Vexarius stood, spreading his wings in a magnificent display. Beautiful words, councillor. But words alone do not demonstrate capability. The summit of clans has always included the flight of unity, where council members soar together to symbolize our strength and cohesion. How can you participate in this sacred tradition from a wheeled chair? Before Seraphine could respond, a commotion arose from the human section. Helena had broken free from her father's grip and was running across the arena floor, her braids flying behind her. Julian called after her, but she was too fast, too determined. "Stop!" Helena's small voice somehow carried across the enormous space. "Stop being mean to Miss Seraphine." Guards moved to intercept her, but High Elder Morpheus raised his staff.
Let the child speak.
Innocent voices often carry truths we have forgotten. Helena skidded to a stop beside Seraphine's chair, breathing hard. She looked up at the council members with no fear, only righteous indignation. "You are all being very silly. Miss Seraphine is a wonderful leader. She is kind and smart and brave. Just because she cannot fly does not mean she cannot lead." Lord Vexarius laughed condescendingly. "Child, you cannot possibly understand the complexities of dragon governance or the importance of our traditions. I understand that you are being a bully." Helena shot back, her voice trembling but firm. "My papa taught me that real strength is not about what your body can do. It is about what your heart chooses to do. Miss Seraphine's heart chooses to help people, to make things fair, to protect those who need protecting. That is what makes a good leader." She turned to face the assembled thousands, her small figure somehow commanding attention through sheer force of will. "Do you know what I think? I think you are all scared. You are scared that if Miss Seraphine can be a leader without flying, then maybe flying is not what makes you special. Maybe what makes you special is being kind and wise and good, and that is harder than flying. So you want to pretend flying is what matters most." The arena fell into stunned silence. Even Lord Vexarius seemed at a loss for words. Julian had reached the arena floor and stood frozen, watching his daughter challenge an entire civilization with nothing but honesty and courage. High Elder Morpheus leaned forward on his staff, his ancient eyes studying Helena with something that might have been respect. "Child, what is your name?" "Helena Thornfield, sir," she replied, adding a belated curtsy that she had probably read about in books. "Helena Thornfield, you speak with wisdom beyond your years. But tell me this. If you believe Councillor Dravenmoor does not need to fly to lead, how would you answer those who say the flight of unity is sacred tradition that cannot be altered?" Helena thought for a moment, her face scrunched in concentration. Then her expression cleared and she smiled. "My papa says that traditions are like recipes. The ingredients matter less than the meaning behind them. If the flight of unity is about showing that council members work together and are strong together, then maybe Miss Seraphine can show that in a different way. Maybe she can show that even when you fall, others can help you rise. That is stronger than flying alone, is it not?" The murmurs grew louder now. Octavia was smiling through her tears. Several younger dragons were nodding vigorously. Even some of the council members looked thoughtful rather than dismissive. Seraphine reached down and took Helena's hand, squeezing gently. "Thank you," she whispered. Lord Vexarius, seeing support slipping away, played his final card. "This is all very touching, but it does not change the facts. Councillor Dravenmoor cannot perform the flight of unity. The law is clear. If a council member cannot participate in the sacred ceremonies, they must step down." "Then change the law," a voice called from the human section. More voices joined in, a chorus of support from both humans and younger dragons. "Change the law. Let her lead. She has earned her place." High Elder Morpheus struck his staff against stone 3 times, the sound echoing like thunder. Silence. When quiet returned, he looked at Seraphine with eyes that had seen centuries pass. "Councillor Dravenmoor, if we were to modify the flight of unity to accommodate your situation, what would you propose?" Seraphine felt her heart pound. This was the moment Julian had prepared her for, the moment all those painful treatments had been building toward. "High Elder, I propose a demonstration, not of flight, but of strength, determination, and the power of cooperation between species." She looked at Julian, who nodded encouragingly. Then she reached up and gripped the armrests of her chair. Slowly, fighting against muscles that screamed in protest, Seraphine pushed herself to standing. Her legs trembled and her wings twitched spasmodically, but she stood. Gasps echoed through the arena. Even Lord Vexarius looked shocked. Seraphine had not stood unaided since the accident. For months, Dr. Julian Thornfield has been treating me using techniques that combine dragon healing wisdom with human medical science, Seraphine said, her voice strained but clear. He has taught my body new pathways, new ways to interpret the signals my damaged nerves send. I cannot fly. That truth has not changed. But I can stand. I can walk. And I can demonstrate that the cooperation between our species creates possibilities neither could achieve alone. Julian had moved to stand behind her, ready to catch her if she fell but not touching, letting her maintain her own balance. Nurse Evelyn appeared from the crowd, pushing a tall standing frame that would provide support while still allowing freedom of movement. The flight of unity represents our strength together, Seraphine continued, taking one shaking step, then another, toward the center of the arena. But true unity is not about everyone being the same. It is about everyone contributing what they can, supporting each other's weaknesses with their strengths. If I cannot fly with the council, then let the council fly for me. Let them carry my message to the skies while I carry theirs to the ground. Let us show that leadership takes many forms and all are valuable. She had reached the standing frame now. With Julian and Nurse Evelyn's help, she secured herself to it. Then, with everyone watching, she raised her wings. They did not lift her from the ground. They could not. But they spread wide, catching the sunlight, casting shadows across the arena floor that proved she was still here, still fighting, still whole, despite her brokenness. Octavia was the first to move. She launched into the air, circling above her sister, her silver scales flashing. One by one, the younger dragons joined her, creating a spiral of color and motion above Seraphine's standing form. They flew the patterns of the traditional flight of unity, but instead of flying apart to show individual strength, they flew in tight formation supporting each other, moving as one. High Elder Morpheus stood, spreading his ancient wings. I have lived 3 centuries, he announced to the assembled thousands. I have seen wars and peace, tragedy and triumph, the rise and fall of leaders beyond counting. And in all that time, I have never witnessed courage like I see before me now. He launched into the air, joining the younger dragons in their flight. One by one, the other council members followed. Even Lord Vexarius, after a long moment of visible internal struggle, spread his crimson wings and joined the formation. From the ground, secured to her standing frame, Seraphine watched them fly. Tears streamed down her face, but they were no longer tears of grief. Helena ran to her side, hugging her legs carefully. Julian stood nearby, his expression proud and soft. The dragons spiraled higher and higher, their movements perfectly synchronized, until they formed a living crown of wings high above Seraphine's head. Then, as one, they dove back toward the arena floor, pulling up at the last moment to land in a circle around her standing frame. Each dragon bowed, acknowledging her leadership not despite her inability to fly, but because she had found the strength to lead anyway. High Elder Morpheus approached, his ancient face creased with a smile. Councillor Dravenmoor, I move to dismiss Lord Vexarius's challenge. You have proven beyond doubt that you possess the wisdom, courage, and dedication required of a council member. The method by which you participate in our traditions may differ from those who came before, but the spirit of your service honors everything those traditions represent. Seconded, said another council member. Seconded, said another. Even Lord Vexarius, his face flushed with embarrassment, bowed his head. I withdraw my challenge. I was wrong, councillor. You have taught this old dragon that strength comes in forms I had never considered. The arena erupted in cheers. Dragons roared their approval, the sound shaking the ancient stones. Humans applauded until their hands hurt. Helena jumped up and down, squealing with delight. Seraphine looked down at the little girl who had changed everything. You did this, she said softly. Your words made them listen. Helena shook her head seriously. No, Miss Seraphine. You did this. I just reminded everyone what they already knew in their hearts. Sometimes grown-ups forget important things and kids have to remind them. Julian finally approached and Seraphine saw tears in his eyes. I was going to ask if you were all right, but I think that might be the most unnecessary question in history. I am better than all right, Seraphine replied. I am free. Not free from my injury, not free from struggle, but free from the belief that my worth is defined by what I have lost rather than what I have gained. In the days that followed, Seraphine's story spread across both dragon and human territories. Letters arrived from young dragons with injuries, from humans with disabilities, from anyone who had ever been told they were less than whole. Her refusal to accept others' definitions of her limitations inspired a movement that would change laws and attitudes across 7 cities and all the dragon clans. The Skyreach Accords were signed in a ceremony that celebrated cooperation rather than conformity, unity rather than uniformity. Julian was offered positions at prestigious institutions again, but he chose to remain at the small Skyreach Medical Institute, working in partnership with dragon healers to develop treatments that had never been possible before.